Welcome to Yell, Fight, Sooie, college football from three friendly-ish rivals.
And we are welcoming back to Yell, Fight, Sooie. It is our hockey sweater day, everybody, guys. Hold up your hockey sweater thingies. Um, Andy, our teams don't have a hockey team, but the Sooie does.
They,
Scott, a little bit about how the
You guys
what?
do. You
they
guys do.
do.
No,
Matter of
not
fact,
a club team.
and
Okay, okay.
I can absolutely say this because your team lost to my team last week.
Whoa, whoa, whoa. Okay, we actually have some hockey rivalry to talk about because
Yeah,
now,
and you scored an own goal. Y'all pulled your goalie and
okay.
knocked the puck back into your own net.
First of
Congratulations.
all, we've set a record for 30 seconds off the rails. Okay, so
There's no own goals in hockey, Andy. Come on.
There
Soccer
was.
love even.
There's an actual film of it. I can send it to you.
So, Scott, let me ask you this then. You have been preaching hockey to us forever. Andy, you go semi-regular to NHL games when you're in town for one.
Sure.
I've been to one, but you've been talking this college thing, and then all of a sudden A&M beats you. How does that make you feel, man? Are you okay?
Well, A&M didn't beat me.
No, we beat you.
How do you feel, Jim? A&M beat you.
Well, I have a hockey team.
Yeah,
You do.
UT's got a club team. Yeah,
They do.
part of the ACHA, I believe.
Oh, wow. We're learning things.
There's two hockey governing bodies in college. There's the NCAA, and that's for the main teams. But for the club teams can actually participate in the NCAA group if they don't have a regular team. Otherwise, they play in a thing called the ACHA, which is the American Club Hockey Association.
I am flabbergasted. I was unaware until literally this very second. I'm now Googling the Longhorn Club hockey schedule. So Andy, y'all beat us? That's rude.
We did.
Oh,
It was, I think, 4-3, something like that.
I
So that
never.
so that goal that you scored against yourselves really came in handy. We appreciate it.
Well, yeah. Well, you're welcome, I guess. I was I was just proud that we had a Quidditch team and we're pretty good at that. So
National champions.
yeah, like 17 times or something. And some of those players have actually seen a woman naked. So yay. But we are back here and we're going to talk a little bit about it's
Hey,
kind of funny that we jumped into the rivalry thing because
reminding me fiction is real if you want it to be real.
we're glad that we jumped into this episode because we're talking a little bit about the SEC pods, I guess, have been leaked or they're official. Andy, jump into that real quick. Break it down. How official are they? Are they just a leak? And what does it look like?
Officially unofficial at this point because the SEC front office has not spoken on it as of yet. But the Athletic posted an article as soon as, I mean, they had it ready to go as soon as they dropped the news that Texas OU would be official in 24. So I've got to think with as quick as that article came out, they had basically the article ready to print. They had somebody willing to confirm it, so they went to press with it. So all but official from the SEC front office. So where we are with that is it is going to be a 9-game schedule when Texas and OU join the league in the football season of 24. We will have each 3 permanent rivalries. It is not a pod system because our 3 permanent rivals will not be the same as your 3 permanent rivals, will not be the same as Arkansas's 3 permanent
Okay,
rivals.
right.
Although there is some pollination between the 3 of us. So my permanent rivals will be the University of Texas, Louisiana State University, and evidently Mississippi State. Texas's permanent rivals will be Oklahoma University, Arkansas, and who else did we decide it was?
A&M.
And A&M. That's right. I've already forgotten. It's so long. And then Arkansas will be Missouri, Texas, and what?
And Ole Miss. Ole Miss.
Kentucky. I don't know.
Ole
Some
Miss.
other.
Scott, what because we had hypothesized what this would look like. Are you enjoying, do you like this better than what would have been a pod system where basically all 4 would have played each other?
Yeah, the pod system to me seemed I like what they're doing. There's still some better rotation, in my opinion. A strict pod system where, let's say, the 3 of us in Missouri are playing each other every year. Well, what happens if all of us have a great season and then the best team of the bunch winds up with 2 losses, 3 losses? or we all wind up with between ourselves, and how are you going to rank that overall, and you don't really play the same teams. There seems to be more I don't know, I hate to say parity, but there seems to be more parity, and like they're leveling it out across the field. So I like this better. I definitely like this better, and I think I like this better than West and East divisions, which they were never going to do, because they're not going to put Alabama, Auburn, Georgia, Tennessee, and Florida all in the same division. So this is the best option that there would have been.
I think the other great part about this is that if you are a student athlete, or if you're just a fan who likes to travel, you are guaranteed in this system to go to every SEC stadium at least once every 4 years.
Oh, that's a good idea. That's cool.
Providing there's not a second wave of COVID. I didn't speak it into existence, I swear. No, but that is a great perk.
Why don't you just say Beetlejuice 3 times, Scott? God damn it.
You want me to? I'm the ghost with the most, babe.
That's pretty good.
Because the way we're set up now, I can tell you, being one of the new kids on the block, so to speak, we still have not hosted Georgia in 11 years in the SEC, and we still have not traveled to Kentucky. And while that's not necessarily the worst thing in the world, part of the deal of being in a conference is you'd like to play everybody in your conference, and you'd like to go to all the stadiums and experience all the things you can experience. Instead, you get to experience Starkville one too many times, which we get to continue to do. But
you get to do that every other year now.
Yeah, but it should be something where the student athletes get to say, "Hey, I got to play at, behind the hedges. I got to go to Alabama." For us, it's also great that we don't have to play Alabama every year because,
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. Also, as an Arkansas fan, I'm thrilled, man. Bama and Auburn every year just came off my schedule. LSU just came off my schedule every year. A&M came off my schedule for every year. That sounds amazing, because the West, the last decade or so, and honestly, the East before the West was an absolute weekly gauntlet. I mean, the worst team that you were going to play could beat you by 30.
Right.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm all for Missouri and Ole Miss are my permanent rivals.
Well,
Cool.
and you're gonna get more. I mean, just mathematically, you're gonna get more Vanderbilt, more Kentucky, more of the Eastern teams that you weren't getting because you had a healthy diet of the West every year. So it's going to be more parity amongst the teams in the league, which I think is good.
Yeah, and a trip to Kentucky is actually kind of cool. So I've been there for a game. So I hope you're able to experience that, Andy.
Well, yeah,
Even
if you don't make it to Lexington, you just go to Evan Williams. I mean, that's the thing.
And what does OU's permanent rivals look like, Andy? Do you know?
I don't have it on. I mean, you guys, and I think Missouri and one of the SEC teams, but I don't have it in front of me right now, unfortunately.
Yeah.
See if I can dig it up while we're talking.
I'm looking for that as well.
Because I'd be interested to see, because you're right. I mean, it does. Although it does coincide with a larger playoff field, Scott. So maybe some of that also gets mitigated by the number of losses. Because as we know, and it just matters more in the SEC.
It does. You'll see that now, being part of it a little bit early, you'll start to feel how much more it means, because it does. It just means more. I think also we've seen so many. It's really, really rare now for us to see a national championship game with 2 undefeated teams, right? I don't know if we have. The thought of 2 lost teams making it into the playoffs, potentially a 3 lost team making it into the playoffs, that seems real now, given some of the schedules that these teams are going to be playing.
And it's not like the SEC added slouches as the Big 12 added BYU and U of H, right? Like they added 2 prominent historical football powers. And I guess Andy, how much did UT have to loan Oklahoma to get to come over?
So 2 things. The Athletic still has not cut off my access. It's been a year and a half. Thanks, Athletic. And secondly, Oklahoma's other rival is LSU.
That's a pretty tough gauntlet for them.
So to answer your question, OU and Texas negotiated down what would have been a $160 million deal, $80 million per school to leave the Big 12 to $100 million combined. you can speculate all you want on what sort of loan and what sort of terms Texas probably had to make to OU to get that deal to happen. Well, let's say 60-40. Let's say a 60-40 split. With what's the interest rate? Prime is what, 7.5 right now. You add a couple points to that. I think a 10% seems fair amongst friends. So at the end of the day, you probably covered what, 70% of it. Which you guys, what do you just sell off another medical school? And
here we go. No, I think it's interesting. You know what else too, Scott? When Andy reads off the pod, you had mentioned that you wondered if OU would turn into Nebraska. At the time that it's coming into this league, it's clearly a downtime for the university, one that we've not seen over there for 20 years. And now all of a sudden, everything just got harder, recruiting and level of play.
Yeah, doesn't it feel like it? I mean, to me, it still really does, even more so than before. I don't think that teams outside of the SEC truly realize until they're in just how difficult the conference really is. You can see it. That every week you don't get anything off. But Texas is on an upswing right now and has the financial coffers to continue to be on that upswing. This process really has to make me question what OU has in the coffers, really, especially if they're having to pay Texas back something. And they're not trending in the right direction since Lincoln Riley left. So it doesn't feel like it bodes well for what's coming up for OU. And I can totally see them turning into the Huskers of the Big Ten, come in and maybe make a little bit of a splash here and there the first 5 years, and then just kind of, fall off, and which will make a certain quarterback in South Carolina by the name of Spencer Rattler happy.
I'd like to add
Spencer Rattler. You're welcome, guys. I covered that for us. You're
there we go.
Now. I think the other thing that's going to be a challenge for Oklahoma is that unless they do some really interesting out-of-conference scheduling, they're only guaranteed one game in the state of Texas now every year. And as good as they do or have done historically cherry-picking national recruiting, some in California, which Lincoln Riley, frankly, has locked down and may well for the foreseeable future, they've always made their blood in Texas because they could say, hey, we're right here. We're right on the border. We're going to, especially since we've been in the Big 12, we're going to play a lot of games in the state.
Yeah.
Your mom and dad, you can come see. It's just a quick drive up from Dallas. It's not a big deal. It's just like being here. They're not going to be able to say that much anymore because outside of the state fair, it's going to be once every 4 years they get to come inside the state border. And
let me ask you guys. Sorry, Andy. I thought you'd wrapped up. Let me ask you guys a question. Does it feel to you like Oklahoma and UCLA are kind of the biggest losers out of all this, unless something drastically changes? Out of all the most recent reorgs, those two really feel like, UCLA has turned into USC's little brother.
Well, I think you're right. And it's interesting because I think UCLA kind of already knew that. Like they already kind of knew that their fortunes were tied to USC. I think Oklahoma would like to think that's not the case, that they can actually, and then maybe it's unfair because it doesn't really matter how successful you actually are on the field. It's what your brand is like, how valuable your brand is. And I think Oklahoma would have liked to thought that they could have chose their own destiny and instead couldn't. And to Andy's reporting months ago, actually prevented Texas from wanting to go where they wanted to go because of their ineptitude academically. So yeah, I think that they are definitely, I think they would have preferred to stay in the Big 12 where they could play OSU every year and play in Texas every year. Like what Andy's saying.
Yeah. And I think Arkansas lived that at the end of the Southwestern Conference, right? Whenever we joined the SEC, which was 30 years ago. But I mean, when Arkansas was part of the SEC, guys, we were top 10 frequently in football, basketball, everything. We went to Final Fours and Elite Eights. We went to January 1st bowl games. We were kind of a big deal. And then we joined the SEC. You take the money, but there's a trade-off because life just got a lot harder. So as I say what Oklahoma is going through, I can put Arkansas in that same boat. Arkansas kind of turned into a Nebraska, right? Kind of turned into a UCLA. I think OU is going to be in the same boat, but I think OU is going to be that way across all sports. Doesn't get easier in baseball over here. Doesn't get easier in basketball for damn sure. Doesn't get easier in football. I think OU's got a huge learning curve ahead of them.
Yeah. Andy, do you want to chime in on that? Whether OU's becoming
we spent an inordinate amount of time on the Land Thieves.
okay. Well, I do want to move to something kind of fun that I wanted to talk about, and it was interesting because I was thinking about this as you shut up, and this is before I found out that my beloved hockey team lost to yours. Whenever we played, but is arguing about rivalries stupid from the fan perspective? And here's my premise. My premise is that it is. Andy, we're going to be thrown back into a situation where we're playing every year. You and I are going to listen to the same stupid arguments from Orange Bloodsites and Texagites, and we're going to roll our eyes, and it's always going to be the following argument. Well, Texas has the way advantage all time over A&M. Yeah, but in the last 20 years, it's blah, blah, blah. These arguments are so stupid because there's no way to win them. And so I just wonder, what's the point of doing it? Andy, do you think it's fun? Because I don't.
It stopped being fun a while ago, and it's 40 years because we like to do the since scholarship limitations and the playing field was leveled and you could stop recruiting every player in the state of Texas and just hide them on your bench to keep them off our roster. That's the argument, just so you know. And also you didn't let us play for the first 20 years anywhere but Austin. That was also another thing. You never came to College Station. So those years don't count. And then there was the war years. So those years don't count. So there's a very narrow window where
that counts.
Record is even since that number. So there, but also 1939. So there, stuck on that. They are two, no matter how much we want to talk about it, and I'm sure I will get hate from my fellow Aggies, they are two very similar schools because they are made up of the exact same population base. They draw from the same kids, from the same cities and the same towns in the same state. The kids choose from one of the two schools by and large, and they're pulling those kids, the best kids out of the state, and going, hey, which one do you want to go to? And some kids choose one and some kids choose the other, and that's kind of the end of it. This idea that there's some weird geopolitical, socioeconomic difference, and there's this group of farmers living in College Station that do education differently, and this group of rich elitist snobs that live in Austin that do education a different way, and it's much better. That doesn't exist anymore. And I don't know that it ever really did, but it certainly stopped existing somewhere probably about 1970 or so.
Yeah.
We still hold on to that because it's fun. I don't think there's anything wrong with a fun rivalry, but it stops being fun after a while because it just plays into these weird stereotypes that aren't really reflective of reality anymore. I'll give you a good for instance that I encountered this week. Most people know I work for a hotel company. We own 8 hotels in Austin. If you listen to some of the people on Texags, Austin is a wasteland full of homeless drug users, and they live on every street corner. And yes,
it's just half of them.
4 or 5 years ago, Austin had a horrible, horrible homeless problem. And about 3 years ago, they started working on cleaning it up, and it is not near what it was 4 or 5 years ago. It's a problem like every other large Sunbelt city, though, but it's not something that keeps recruits away from the school or affects the football program. But we like to pretend this is big. You're not going to recruit that guy because his mom's not going to let him go there because there's a homeless guy next to the Capitol building. The Capitol building, by which most football players are never going to go anywhere near, even though it's 5 blocks away from the campus. Just, go with that. Nobody would go to College Station. It's a farm. Said by most people who either haven't been to College Station or haven't been to College Station since 1963. So it's no longer fun because it's not based on anything in reality. There are plenty of things to poke fun at in Austin. I do it a lot. There are plenty of things to poke fun at in College Station. There are a lot of things to poke fun at in Arkansas, believe me.
Well, before Andy chimes in on this, though, I wanted to bring something else to you because you said it was the same kids, same schools, whatever. It's also the same donors, right? Like everything about this, they're both two schools fueled by and large by the oil industry in this state. Like, you're exactly right. They're not that different. And I think that's why it makes it so exhausting for me. Scott, what do you think? I mean, you see this Cardinals Cubs, you see this.
From the outside looking in, nobody likes either of you either. Anyway, one of you is arrogant, one of you is weird. We're a bunch of inbred hillbillies. I get it. No, I think certain rivalry. So here's two things. Multiple thoughts coming through my brain while listening to Andy talk. Number one, I still think rivalry discussion can be entertaining if done face to face or by voice communication.
Okay,
but when you're, if the look at what we're doing here, right? I mean that kind of proves it can be fun. But if you're talking about people just typing messages on social media, hey, well, 1982, we ran for blah, blah, nobody gives a rat's rear end, man. I mean, that stuff is pointless to the issue, to the point you made at the start of this segment, Jim. There's no end in it. It's pointless. There's this.
Yeah. There's let's have a beer afterward.
Right.
And one of the things.
I was going to say, but let's face it, with most rivalries, it's not even. It's not an even rivalry, right? Like Texas OU, that's even. You two hate each other.
But even Texas OU, I think the win-loss is still like 20 games in Texas's favor. Like it's not a close rivalry mathematically.
Right. And not right. Mathematically, it's not. From the fan base perspective, though, there's an equal disdain, there's an equal feeling toward each other. Arkansas, Texas. That you can't say the same thing there. Arkansas can't stand Texas. Texas, by this point, just kind of looks at us and goes, okay, whatever, you're there. Ohio State, Michigan, great rivalry. Army, Navy, USC, Notre Dame. There's Oregon State, Utah State. These are rivalries that absolutely matter, where they meet equally. That's fun. But for many of these, it's, Arkansas and LSU is a great example where they make a trophy called the boot that they play for every year. But it's not that big of a deal. Arkansas, Missouri, they built a trophy and said, hey, you two guys are permanent rivals now. Hate each other. And it's like,
right. Well, but
don't have it. I got it.
I know, and you want to respond. Before you do, I think Scott also hits the nail on the head. Like maybe, because I watch my students who are, 15, 16 years old, and they argue like you argue on Twitter. And I wonder if that's what's changing my perspective of it, because we can have a playful, fun argument. I mean, Scott, we do it literally all the time. And
all the time.
And then we're at the bar drinking. Like, I wonder if that's part of it, Andy.
I think one of the other pieces, I think that is part of it. I think the other piece of perspective that we lose inside of the state of Texas, and Scott can probably back me up on this, is outside of the state of Texas, nobody cares about the Texas A&M rivalry. This is not some thing of legend where people, I grew up watching that game on TV. Nobody gives a shit. It's not even Alabama, Auburn. It's probably on the level of Ole Miss, Mississippi State, if you want to be really, really honest about what it has meant in the historical realm of college football. Because it's just not that impactful for the history of national championships, of making playoff. I mean, there weren't playoffs, but important bowl games or seeding, getting to the Cotton Bowl, any of those things. It just hasn't meant that much. I think there's only been like 2 times where it's meant the conference championship when those 2 teams were in the same conference in 100 years.
Andy, really glad you brought up Mississippi State, and I don't mean to fully interrupt here, but I think that's great, because the Thursday night or Thanksgiving night football games were Texas A&M and Ole Miss, Mississippi State. But since you guys haven't played lately, honestly, Ole Miss, Mississippi State carries more weight outside of the state of Texas probably than you guys do playing each other, because you just haven't done it in so long.
I also wonder too, guys, and sorry, Andy, I'll get back to you in a second, but I also wonder too, because the joke was on them. Like when they put the Cowboys on Thanksgiving, they thought no one would watch. Like it was a sort of, let's just get some airtime stuff. I think to your point, you're correct. And also I think USC Notre Dame, for example, is a bigger rivalry because we're our own state. And as much as we're our own country, we're also our own state, Andy.
No, 100%. I think that is a bigger rivalry. I think Michigan, Ohio State is a bigger deal, certainly, than Texas A&M. I think you could probably name a handful of rivalries that supersede anything that we have going on inside our state. We tend to make it bigger than it is here. But and the beating of the horns that the local media does or have done for the last 11 years about what a crime it is that these two teams don't play.
And you and I never cared. We were like, eh.
Oh, and I don't think most people do. I think it's something fun for the journalists in the state to cry about because they've got to fill up column space at a certain point every November. But did it matter? Did it matter when you guys were playing Kansas or Baylor or Tech? It didn't, because you still had a football game to cover. It doesn't matter when we were playing LSU. It'll be really interesting to see what the SEC decides to do with that Thanksgiving weekend game for both those teams, because I don't necessarily think it's a given that A&M and Texas are going to be playing that weekend. I can tell you this, neither team is going to be playing on Thanksgiving Day, because I think, to Scott's point, any team that's going to be playing is going to be in the state of Mississippi, and nobody should be playing against the NFL, because from a rating standpoint, why give it away?
The minute the NFL went to 3 games, that was it.
There's no point. Yeah. You could put the two worst. You could put the Texans playing the Texans B squad up on Thursday night, and it would outdraw whatever college game you're putting on. So why give it away? Put it on Saturday.
Yeah, the Texans B squad just terrifies me. Just the thought of that, by the way, at least right now until they get better. No, I think, I think you guys are hitting the nail right on the head. There's interest. I think there's going to be some interesting things that happen, though, with OU and Texas joining. For one thing, what does your rivalry look like when you regain? I'll also say, Jim, from an Arkansas perspective, Texas was the team we hated. Even though it's the rivalry is absolutely one-sided in favor of Texas, it was the circle that date every year. It's a big deal. It was made a bigger deal in 1969 when it was the first time that a sitting president helicoptered into Fayetteville, Arkansas, to watch the game of the century, the first game of the century.
Right.
But for the last years, we played a handful of times. It's been a big deal to old guys like me, but people in their 20s who haven't been accustomed to playing you guys every year, you're not a rival anymore. So it's going to be really interesting when we do start playing each other every year.
I'm interested to get y'all's take on this as we kind of wrap this up. But looking at specifically Texas A&M, or I'm sorry, how other schools view Texas, how much of that is also a state rivalry? Like, people don't like us as a state because we think we're cocky and egotistical. We think we're better than everyone. I mean, we are, but we're loud about it. How much of that do you think plays into some of the sort of, like you said, the Arkansas just hating Texas?
From the outsider standpoint looking in, yeah, that's part of it. I mean, absolutely. Oh, Texas is playing Texas A&M. Okay, fine. My drunk uncle's playing my uncle I don't give a crap about. Let them go play their ping pong game. Fine, whatever. I mean, there's a bit of that. I will still say personally, if I've got Texas A&M and Texas on the TV, and I've got Ole Miss, Mississippi State on the TV, I'm probably still going to watch Texas and A&M. I think it's a game. I think when you guys play each other, it's a game that other people say, man, doesn't matter, but they tune in, but they watch. So, and the ratings show that. So it's, ratings for Texas games, rating for A&M games, period, right now. Games in the state, TCU last year. How many people just hated the fact that TCU was in the championship game simply because of the state they're from? I mean, yes, there is a certain disdain for Texas, because you're better than all of us. Sorry, almost got that out. But I do think that partially does play into it, probably more than people want to admit. But yeah, because other state rivalries, in-state rivalries, you think Bama and Auburn, right? That's the one in-state rivalry that you think about. Really, maybe a national.
But then there's Oregon State on the other side. No one
right, which if you're in Oregon, that's the biggest thing of the year, right? It's Civil War. That's what they call it. But if you're here, I don't care about Oregon and Oregon State. I don't care. Cool jerseys, both sides, great. Other than that, change the channel. Let's go to the next thing.
I thought they just wanted to know what the next strain of patchouli oil and pot was going to be in Oregon, and that's all they cared about.
Yeah, but that's everywhere now. That's everywhere. The Patchouli Bowl is going to be held between Colorado and Colorado State. No. But yeah, I do think certain rivalries, when they take place if you can get teams that are in separate states, like Michigan, Ohio State, USC, Notre Dame, like that situation, then I think it becomes a big deal. But it's got to be something incredibly special for two teams inside the same state to have a rivalry and it become national and it become a huge deal, like Duke, North Carolina in basketball, or Bama and Auburn in football. A&M and Texas could. You guys both
Well,
going
and
along.
Andy, they'll certainly make a big deal about the first one. Like they definitely will do that.
They will. I'm
Oh,
sitting
yeah.
here thinking though, if A&M holds on to LSU as their Thanksgiving weekend rivalry game, would either of you guys be opposed to Arkansas, Texas being the season ender for both of you every year?
I mean, I do like to eat turkey on Thanksgiving, but I can eat pig too. I'm fine.
Yeah, it's fine because Bevo tastes great.
Boom.
I'm very confident though that they're going to hold the Missouri Arkansas rivalry for the Friday after Thanksgiving. I don't think that's going anywhere.
Well, it'd be interesting to see because it would be difficult to impossible to get Texas OU out of the state fair.
Well, I was going to ask. That was my next question, Andy, because I know you're dialed in on this stuff. I mean, I'm assuming the plan is still to do the neutral ground 50 state the stadium split in half, that whole thing.
I don't think you could get out of it for the foreseeable future because they have a contract with the Cotton Bowl for that to happen that way. Now, when that contract's up, who knows?
That would kill that rivalry too, by the way. It really would.
I think that's part of it, but I also think Texas doesn't need that to happen anymore. There was a point, I think, probably about 5 years ago where Texas might have entertained it because your home schedule kind of sucked.
Yeah.
So your home tickets were Tech and Baylor and Kansas State and Iowa State. And oh God, if we could get OU to come here, we would sell that game out at least. I don't know that you're going to need that because you're going to have Alabama or Auburn or Florida or Georgia and some multiples of those teams coming in every year now. So that problem is solved for you starting in 2024. I don't know that you need to move that. I don't know what's going to happen as far as a rivalry game for you for that last week though, or if that is even a thing you care about. Because Texas has a number of rivals.
We have two.
Some of which you actually
Oklahoma and Missouri
consider rivals.
Did you say that Texas's three teams are Arkansas, Oklahoma, Missouri?
No, A&M.
A&M.
Drop Missouri.
Arkansas, yeah. Oklahoma, and A&M.
Yeah. If anything, I could see the LSU game getting dropped for you guys because that's more of a natural rivalry, and I would need to see who LSU's three pod teams are, or three every year teams to be able to figure that out. But I will say, as far as the neutral site goes, though, you've already got precedents. Long before Arkansas and A&M kept playing each other every year in Dallas, Georgia and Florida play each other in Jacksonville at the Gator Bowl. So because
I do think if it becomes a home and home, it kills that rivalry.
Yeah,
I mean, Bama and Auburn played in Birmingham.
LSU is Ole Miss, A&M, and Oklahoma. So it can't be
Oklahoma.
They're going to miss
the Oklahoma and LSU will be the final Thanksgiving weekend. You guys will be, and we'll keep Missouri.
It'll be interesting to see because A&M fought pretty hard for LSU, and LSU was in agreement for that last weekend. So I think that'll be one of the interesting things to see when they announce that schedule for 24, 10 months from now.
Yeah,
Jim, but I do think why would it kill that rivalry? Because I would think that certain Oklahoma fans that don't have cars that can make it all the way to Dallas might be very interested in actually seeing a game that you guys could come to in Norman.
When you talk about the rivalry, you very rarely talk about the competition of each individual game. A lot of times those games are blowouts one way or the other. Very rarely does the lower ranked team actually beat the other ranked team. What do they talk about? The stadium split in half of it's crimson, half of it's burnt orange. I think the location has everything to do with it.
I do. Okay. You would have to attend a game at the Cotton Bowl to fully understand what Jim is talking about with this particular game. Because Oklahoma, those fans would not have the same impacts in DKR, and the Texas fans likewise going up to Oklahoma.
Sure.
It's a whole, okay. Yeah. I mean, and maybe that could be a fun thing we should do at one point is just kind of take the show on the road or something, because I think it is something. It's one of those few games that I think everybody should sort of experience, right? Like going to USC Notre Dame or something like that. I mean, it really is a whole different animal than what I had experienced as a college football fan until I went for the first time.
Good. Yeah, because I haven't been. So very good point. I feel educated.
You can't wear your jorts, Scott, or else you'll fit it too much in with the.
Not even the
Yeah, they'll
fancy
think
one.
they'll think you're with OU. Not even your fancy jorts. All right, guys.
Well,
what I'm going to do is I'm going to wear the jorts, but I'll have like a burnt orange tank top and gym shorts under that. And so when everybody thinks I'm going for OU, then I'll do like the one piece rip away and be like, "Oh, I've gone bad," and there I.
Here's our
I'm
friend
actually-
Scott. He's a meme.
I'm actually,
awesome.
I'm actually completely here for it. All right, that does wrap up Yell Fight Sooie. Scott is the Sooie over there. Andy is the Yell, and this has been a great episode. We'll be back. I guess next week we'll finally start looking at the college baseball season that will be upon us starting tonight, right? Like we should get some games
when
tonight.
Arkansas plays Texas. When Arkansas plays Texas tonight, what a great start!
It's going to be an amazing college baseball season. If only I didn't have a weird idea when I pulled in the parking lot, we would have talked about that too. We'll see you next week.